Introduction. When you pull back your attention and stop contacting a woman, it often sets off a psychological response rooted in curiosity, insecurity, and emotional attachment. Human nature craves validation and consistency, so when that pattern is disrupted, it can trigger unexpected reactions. In female psychology, silence and absence can speak louder than words. It makes her question what went wrong, whether she still holds value in your eyes, and if she may be losing something she once took for granted. Depending on her true feelings and level of investment, she may begin to reach out, test your boundaries, or even display behaviors meant to recapture your attention. This dynamic reveals a powerful truth. Sometimes, what you don't do has a greater impact than constant pursuit. Understanding how women respond to space and distance provides insight into attraction, emotional bonding, and the subtle ways relationships shift when communication is withheld. 1. Curiosity is triggered. Curiosity is one of the most powerful psychological forces that drives human learning, growth, and connection. And understanding how it is triggered can change the way we approach both knowledge and relationships. At its core, curiosity arises when there is a gap between what we know and what we want to know. This information gap theory explains why certain questions, mysteries, or even subtle hints spark our attention while other things pass us by unnoticed. For example, when we hear part of a story but not the ending, our mind becomes restless until the missing piece is filled. This is because the brain is naturally wired to close gaps and resolve uncertainty. Curiosity can also be triggered by novelty. Something unfamiliar, unusual, or slightly mysterious tends to draw us in, because it signals the possibility of learning something new that may be useful or rewarding. In social interactions, curiosity is often triggered when someone reveals just enough about themselves to spark interest, but not so much that the mystery is solved. This is why subtle intrigue is often more engaging than full disclosure. Another important trigger is challenge. When a problem or puzzle seems just within reach of our ability, our mind becomes engaged, eager to test itself and grow. On the other hand, if something is too easy or too difficult, curiosity diminishes because there is either no challenge or too much frustration. Emotional triggers also play a role. When something surprises us, confuses us, or even slightly frustrates us, curiosity rises as the mind seeks clarity. This is why unexpected questions, strange facts, or paradoxes grab attention more than straightforward information. Importantly, curiosity thrives in an environment of safety and freedom. If people fear judgment or failure, their curiosity is suppressed, but when they feel free to explore without punishment, their natural desire to learn flourishes. In everyday life, we can use curiosity as a tool to build deeper relationships. By asking thoughtful questions and showing genuine interest in others, because people feel valued when someone is curious about their story. Similarly, in personal growth, deliberately exposing ourselves to new ideas, perspectives, and experiences keeps the mind sharp and prevents stagnation. Curiosity is not just about gathering information. It is about opening ourselves to the unknown, embracing uncertainty, and seeing every gap in knowledge as an invitation to grow. When curiosity is triggered, we move beyond passive existence into active engagement with the world. And this energy can fuel creativity, problem-solving, and even resilience in difficult times. In short, curiosity is triggered whenever the mind senses mystery, novelty, or possibility, and the more we nurture it, the more life expands in meaning, connection, and discovery. 2. Validation. Validation seeking is one of the most common, yet subtle psychological habits that can shape how we view ourselves and interact with others, and it often determines the quality of our relationships, self-worth, and personal growth. At its core, validation seeking is the tendency to look for approval, recognition, or affirmation from external sources, whether that be friends, family, colleagues, or even strangers, in order to feel secure, confident, or valuable. While the desire for validation is a natural part of being human, as we are social beings who thrive on connection and acknowledgement, the problem begins when this desire turns into dependency. People who constantly chase validation tend to measure their worth through the opinions of others, creating a cycle where their mood, self-esteem, and decisions are all dictated by external approval rather than internal conviction. This cycle not only creates emotional instability but also weakens one's sense of independence, because instead of trusting their own judgment, they prioritize what others think. For example, someone might post online not out of genuine self-expression, but simply to count likes and comments, allowing social media metrics to determine their happiness. In relationships, validation seekers may become overly needy, trying to please others excessively or fearing rejection so much that they lose their authenticity. The root of validation seeking often comes from childhood experiences, where praise or acceptance was conditional, teaching someone to equate approval with love or self-worth. However, breaking free from this pattern involves cultivating inner validation, learning to affirm and value yourself regardless of external responses. Building self-awareness is the first step, noticing when you're acting primarily for approval and questioning whether it aligns with your true values. Next, Practicing self-acceptance helps reinforce that your worth is not based on others' opinions but on your inherent identity and effort. Developing confidence through small achievements, honoring personal boundaries, and embracing solitude are also powerful ways to reduce dependency on external validation. Ultimately, the goal is not to reject validation entirely, since healthy recognition can motivate and encourage growth, but to strike a balance where external validation is a bonus rather than a necessity. A person who no longer relies on validation to feel secure becomes more resilient, authentic, and emotionally stable, able to give and receive love without fear of judgment or rejection. They move through life with a sense of grounded confidence, where approval becomes optional rather than essential, and their happiness stems from an internal source that cannot be taken away. In this way, overcoming validation seeking is a liberating process that allows one to step fully into their power, embrace their uniqueness, and live with true freedom of mind. 3. Emotional reaction. Emotional reactions are the immediate responses we experience when faced with a situation, event, or interaction, and they often arise before rational thought has time to process what is happening. These reactions can be positive, such as joy, excitement, or affection, or negative, like anger, fear, or frustration. What makes emotional reactions powerful is that they are deeply rooted in our biology and psychology, often triggered automatically by past experiences, beliefs, or unconscious associations. For instance, when someone criticizes you, your immediate emotional reaction might be defensiveness or hurt, even before you logically consider whether the feedback has value. This shows that emotions act as a protective mechanism, guiding us to pay attention to potential threats or opportunities. However, while emotional reactions are natural, they are not always accurate or helpful. Left unchecked, they can lead to overreactions, impulsive decisions, or unnecessary conflicts. Learning to understand and manage emotional reactions is therefore a vital part of emotional intelligence and personal growth. Awareness is the first step. By pausing to recognize what you are feeling and why, you create space between stimulus and response. Instead of instantly lashing out in anger or retreating in fear, you can evaluate whether your reaction aligns with your values and long-term goals. Practices like mindfulness, deep breathing, journaling, or reframing thoughts can help regulate emotions and transform reactive patterns into thoughtful responses. Over time, mastering your emotional reactions builds resilience, strengthens relationships, and enhances discipline. Rather than being controlled by fleeting feelings, you become capable of channeling emotions in constructive ways, using anger as motivation for change, fear as a signal for preparation, or sadness as an opportunity for reflection. Ultimately, emotional reactions are not enemies to suppress, but signals to understand and guide. By embracing them with awareness and discipline, you create balance between your emotional world and rational mind, allowing you to navigate life with greater clarity, stability, and wisdom. 4. Testing behavior. Testing behavior is a common psychological phenomenon that occurs in human interactions, particularly in relationships, friendships, and professional dynamics. It refers to the subtle or sometimes obvious ways people evaluate others to see how they will respond under certain conditions. When someone engages in testing behavior, they are not always consciously trying to manipulate or deceive. Rather, they are often seeking clarity, security, or validation, without directly asking for it. For example, a woman might ignore a man's message for a while to see if he becomes needy or remains composed, or a manager might assign a difficult task to a new employee to gauge their resilience and problem-solving ability. In essence, tests are a way people reveal hidden standards or boundaries without openly stating them. Understanding this behavior is crucial, because misinterpreting it can lead to frustration, overreaction, or unnecessary conflict. At its root, testing behavior arises from insecurity, curiosity, or a desire to establish power dynamics. In romantic settings, it is often tied to attraction and trust, as one partner might test the other's patience, loyalty, or confidence before fully committing emotionally. In friendships, it can show up as harmless jokes, teasing, or pushing small boundaries to see how strong the bond is. In workplaces, it might be presented as performance evaluations, deadlines, or sudden challenges that measure competence. The most important lesson about testing behavior is that how you respond determines whether the test strengthens or weakens the relationship. Reacting with composure, self-respect, and emotional intelligence usually earns trust and respect, while reacting with neediness, anger, or defensiveness often exposes weakness. Stoicism teaches that external tests should not disturb your inner stability, and that your response should reflect your values rather than the pressure of the situation. By recognizing when someone is testing you, you gain the ability to stay in control and avoid being manipulated. Instead of overthinking or taking it personally, you can view tests as opportunities to demonstrate confidence, patience, and authenticity. It's also important to note that testing behavior should not be overused or weaponized, because constantly putting people through trials can damage trust and create toxic dynamics. A healthy relationship, whether romantic, friendly, or professional, it requires direct communication rather than endless testing. In short, testing behavior is a natural but sometimes immature way humans seek reassurance and understanding. It teaches us that actions reveal more than words, and how someone reacts under pressure often shows their true character. Therefore, the lesson is not to resent tests, but to master your response. When you learn to remain calm, consistent, and true to your principles, you pass tests effortlessly, and in doing so, you command respect without ever needing to prove yourself forcefully. Testing behavior will always exist, but your strength lies in recognizing it for what it is, a mirror that reflects both your composure and the other person's need for certainty. 5. Reaching out first in life. Relationships, whether personal, professional, or social, are often built on the simple yet powerful act of reaching out first. Many people hold back because of fear of rejection, pride, or the assumption that the other person should make the initial move. But the truth is that waiting passively often causes opportunities, connections, and meaningful relationships to slip away. Reaching out first is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of initiative, courage, and emotional maturity. It shows that you value connection more than ego and that you are willing to take the first step toward building trust and communication. Whether it is sending the first text after an argument, introducing yourself to someone new, or proposing a business idea, this action demonstrates leadership and a proactive mindset. When you reach out first, you break down invisible barriers that hesitation builds, and you send a clear signal that you are open to connection. More importantly, this act reflects confidence in yourself, confidence that, even if your effort is not reciprocated, your worth does not diminish. It is about embracing vulnerability with strength, because only those who are secure enough in themselves can risk being ignored or misunderstood. Reaching out first also nurtures resilience. Even if the response is not what you hoped for, you learn to adapt and move forward rather than remaining stuck in silent assumptions. The habit of initiating conversations and opportunities builds stronger bonds because it creates momentum in relationships. It tells people that you are reliable, approachable, and genuinely invested. In friendships, it prevents distance from turning into disconnection. In love, it shows care and attentiveness. In business, it fosters collaboration and progress. 2. Often, people misinterpret silence as rejection, when in reality, the other person may simply be waiting for you to take the lead. By acting first, you cut through unnecessary guessing games and establish clarity. Reaching out is also an antidote to pride, which often disguises itself as self-respect but actually isolates us from meaningful human experiences. True strength lies in the ability to humble yourself enough to extend your hand, regardless of outcome. Over time, practicing this habit transforms you into someone others can rely on because people notice consistency in those who are not afraid to bridge gaps. At the same time, balance is important. Reaching out first should not come from desperation or the need for validation, but from a grounded sense of who you are and what you value. It should be a conscious choice rather than a compulsion. When approached with the right mindset, initiating connection becomes a tool of empowerment rather than weakness. Ultimately, reaching out first teaches you that relationships thrive on effort, not just on expectations. It shifts your focus from waiting for life to happen to actively shaping it, reminding you that growth, love, and opportunity favor those who are brave enough to go first. 6. Overthinking phase is one of the most draining mental experiences a person can go through, yet it is also one of the most common. Overthinking happens when the mind becomes trapped in a repetitive cycle of analyzing, questioning, and imagining scenarios that rarely lead to solutions but instead generate more stress. This phase often begins with a single thought, perhaps a mistake made, a conversation replayed, or an uncertain future decision. Instead of allowing the thought to pass naturally, the mind seizes it and spins countless what-if scenarios around it. While reflection and analysis can be healthy, overthinking is different because it paralyzes action and magnifies fear. During this phase, a person feels as though they are preparing for every possible outcome, but in reality, they are depleting their mental energy and reinforcing anxiety. Overthinking can cause sleepless nights, second-guessing of every decision, and even strain relationships because the person becomes emotionally unavailable, caught up in their own mental loops. Psychologically, this happens because the brain is trying to protect us from uncertainty or failure, but it often does so in a counterproductive way. Instead of producing clarity, overthinking amplifies confusion and self-doubt. To break free from this phase, it is important to recognize when reflection crosses into rumination. One must consciously practice grounding techniques, such as focusing on the present moment, writing thoughts down to release them from the mind, or setting a time limit for worrying. Action is also a powerful antidote. Once you begin taking small, with steps forward, the grip of overthinking loosens because the mind shifts from speculation to engagement with reality. Additionally, practicing Stoic acceptance of what is beyond control can free a person from the endless cycle of what-ifs. It is not about silencing thoughts completely, but about teaching the mind that not every thought deserves attention or endless analysis. By learning this discipline, individuals transform overthinking into constructive reflection, using their thoughts as a tool instead of being enslaved by them. Ultimately, the overthinking phase is temporary, but its impact depends on whether you let it consume you or use it as a signal to realign your focus. Take decisive action, and trust that life unfolds even without perfect answers. 7. Shift in attraction. Attraction is not a fixed state. It is fluid, constantly shifting in response to both internal growth and external circumstances. A shift in attraction occurs when the qualities, values, or energies that once drew us toward someone no longer hold the same power, or when new traits and behaviors begin to take precedence in our desires. This phenomenon is deeply tied to personal evolution. What excites and captivates us at one stage in life may lose its grip as we mature, gain wisdom, or encounter new experiences. For instance, youthful attraction often thrives on appearance, charm, or intensity, but with time, these surface-level qualities may be overshadowed by the pull of stability, emotional maturity, and shared vision. A shift in attraction can also be triggered by disappointment or disillusionment when someone's actions reveal incongruence with their words. Admiration transforms into doubt, and desire can quickly cool. Conversely, when an individual demonstrates consistency, resilience, or quiet confidence, feelings that were once neutral can blossom into deep attraction. This shift reveals that attraction is not merely about looks or instant chemistry. It is about alignment, respect, and resonance with deeper values. It teaches us that relationships are dynamic, and we must pay attention to the subtle changes within ourselves that signal growth or unmet needs. Recognizing a shift in attraction allows us to navigate connections with honesty instead of forcing interest where it no longer exists. It also helps us appreciate that attraction is not something we chase but something that evolves naturally as we refine our sense of self and what we truly seek in others. In this way, shifts in attraction are not signs of failure but markers of progress, guiding us toward relationships that match who we are becoming rather than who we once were. 8. Power of silence. Silence is often underestimated in a world that glorifies constant talking, instant replies, and endless noise. Yet the power of silence is one of the greatest tools for inner strength, self-mastery, and influence. When a person learns to be silent, they tap into a source of control that many fail to develop. Silence does not mean weakness or lack of words. It is a deliberate choice to observe, reflect, and respond only when necessary. This power allows you to conserve energy, maintain mystery, and command respect without raising your voice. In conversations, silence creates space for others to reveal themselves, because most people are uncomfortable with stillness and rush to fill the void with words, often exposing their true thoughts, intentions, or insecurities. In this way, silence becomes a tool of wisdom, helping you learn more about people without saying a thing. On a deeper level, silence cultivates self-awareness. When you step away from the noise of the world, you give yourself room to listen to your inner voice, reflect on your emotions, and find clarity in moments of confusion. Many conflicts could be avoided if people practiced silence rather than reacting impulsively with anger or pride. Silence teaches patience, and patience strengthens character. It shows that you are not easily provoked or controlled by others, which makes you appear calm and powerful in any situation. The greatest leaders, thinkers, and philosophers often embraced silence as a practice because they understood that restraint is stronger than reaction. Even in persuasion, silence can be more impactful than words. When you pause at the right moment, people lean in, eager to hear what comes next. It creates authority. Furthermore, silence in relationships is a sign of maturity. You do not always need to prove yourself right or respond to every provocation. Sometimes silence says more than any argument could. It protects peace, prevents regret, and maintains dignity. In personal growth, silence helps build focus and discipline by removing distractions and allowing the mind to settle. In spirituality, silence connects you to deeper truths beyond the material world. And in society, where noise dominates every aspect of life, silence becomes rare and, therefore, powerful. The one who can remain silent possesses control over both self and situation, because silence is not emptiness. It is presence. It is a language of its own, one that conveys strength, wisdom, and confidence without the need for constant expression. By mastering the power of silence, you gain the ability to influence others, protect your energy, and walk through life with a quiet but undeniable force that commands respect without demanding it.